Hello, my name is Andreas Rafalski. I am one of the staff sonographers here at Kidneys No Kidding Inc. Here at Kidneys No Kidding Inc., our core value is your kidneys are vital organs in your body to help maintain your proper health. A number of things can go wrong with your kidneys, many of which are either easily preventable or can be treated if addressed early enough. If you have a history of problems with your kidneys, if you're currently experiencing problems with your kidneys, or if you have concerns, please watch this video and contact us if we can be of further assistance to you. Kidneys are susceptible to damage and failure under certain life conditions, which requires medical attention for things like dialysis or kidney transplants. This can become a major life disruption. Therefore, it is important to understand the function of the kidneys and understand how to keep them running properly to keep you healthy. Under normal conditions, people usually have two kidneys, one on the right and left as depicted below. How exactly do the kidneys and their primary functional unit, the nephron, operate? I will be showing you through the parts of the kidney and nephron loop to help illustrate their functions. On the left here, we have, in our model, we have our kidney. Particularly what we're interested in is on the outer edge we have the cortex, and then on the inside we have what's called the medulla. Along the edge here, inside the medulla, are several pyramids that line out the whole interior of the cortex line inside here. So now one of these pyramids between medulla and cortex is highlighted here in a blown out view. So basically this represents what's called the nephron. The nephron basically consists of various blood vessels that are coming between the medulla and the cortex, and there's various different parts within the nephron which I'm going to illustrate in a little while. First off, one of the chief functions of the kidney is to process blood entering the kidney and extract waste products and turn them into urine. Interesting fact, on average approximately 5 liters of blood circulates through the human body every minute. That is pretty fast. Of those 5 liters of blood in circulation every minute, a little more than 1 liter of blood, that's approximately 20 to 25%, arrives at both kidneys every minute. So as with other organs, blood flow to the kidneys in part is to supply nutrients to the kidney. But the major distinction between the kidneys and other organs is that blood flow to the kidney is for the primary purpose of eliminating metabolic waste. Again, back to the kidney. So we have all the different vessels that are coming into the kidney, including the renal artery, the renal vein, and the ureter, which will pass urine out of the kidney and out of the body. The renal artery is being supplied directly from the aorta, so blood flows into the renal artery and is followed through by a network of arteries and arterioles that are basically supplying blood throughout the kidney. Now as the blood vessels are coursing up, they're going to come alongside the pyramid and then make basically a 90-degree turn. Now this here is called the arcuate artery. So this is also illustrated in our large scale view of the nephron. Basically we have this vessel here called the arcuate artery that travels along the edge of the pyramid, and then from here additional arterioles arise up from the arcuate artery, and then eventually they end up at an artery called the afferent artery, beginning with letter A, and it's one of 2 vessels that are entering into the first part of the nephron called the renal corpuscle. Notice that the afferent artery is wider or thicker or bigger than the what's called the afferent artery, which basically is taking the blood out of the renal corpuscle. As the blood is entering into the afferent artery, it enters into the renal corpuscle, which houses what's called the glomerulus, which is basically a network of capillaries that are winding their way through the renal corpuscle, and then basically on the opposite end, the blood flow is out the efferent artery. Basically, there's now the blood is being filtered through that glomerulus with a water waste mixture, which basically exits the corpuscle, the renal corpuscle here, and then enters into what's called the proximal collecting tubule, or also known as the PCT. The fluid passes through the PCT. It's very tortuous and winding in the very first section, and basically what it does is it comes up through here and it enters into what's called the descending tube. Basically, it's going to travel down this tube into a thinner section of the descending tube, and then it basically makes this 180-degree turn or bend and comes into what's called the ascending tubule, which is a little bit thicker again, and then basically it continues up through what's called the distal convoluted tubule. So proximal being closer to the glomerulus, distal being further away from the glomerulus. So the distal convoluted tubule, also known as the DCT, and basically this now transports the fluid into what's called the collecting duct. And if you notice, there's other tubes that are connected here that are located as well, which basically are representing other nephrons, just like this one, that are connecting to the same collecting duct and taking basically the fluid that it has, and it's basically at this point it's already converted into urine, and it passes down through the medullary area and then eventually out through the kidney. The four major nephron functions include glomerular filtration, tubular reabsorption, tubular secretion, and water conservation, which we will discuss next. Blood enters the renal corpuscle via the afferent arteriole and flows through the glomerulus within the renal corpuscle. There's a filtration membrane between the glomerulus and outer capsular space. Any substances in the glomerulus that are smaller than 3 nanometers can enter the capsular space, including water, electrolytes, amino acids, among others. Anything larger than 3 nanometers remains in the glomerulus and exits the renal corpuscle via the efferent arteriole. Among the 4 major functions of the nephron, tubular reabsorption is the process of reclaiming water and solutes from the tubular fluid and returning them to the blood. Among tubular reabsorption, there's a few key aspects. So the first one is sodium chloride, specifically Na plus or sodium plus ion reabsorption, which is really the key to reabsorption. Sodium creates both an osmotic and electrical gradient that drives the reabsorption of water and other solutes. Sodium plus ion is the most abundant cation in the filtrate that comes out of the glomerulus, and basically it has a concentration which is equivalent to 140 MEq per liter. So that's basically 140 milliequivalent of solute per liter of solvent. So basically water being the solvent, and as it enters the PCT, the proximal collecting tubule, the concentration of Na plus is only 12 MEq per liter. So basically 140 and then down to 12 MEq per liter that are leaving the PCT. And so the whole process of the PCT does a lot to reduce the concentration of the sodium plus ion. This is a significant concentration gradient which favors solute diffusion, so basically sodium plus and a whole bunch of other things that are going to be leaving the tubule, the PCT, at that section. Another aspect of tubular reabsorption that I want to address is that of nitrogenous wastes. The urinary system removes a type of waste called urea from the blood. Urea is produced when foods containing protein, such as meat, poultry, and certain vegetables are broken down in the body. Urea is carried in the bloodstream to the kidneys, and then urine has a substantially higher urea concentration than blood or that of the filtrate coming out of the glomerulus. So blood enters the kidney with a urea concentration of about 20 milligrams per deciliter, and blood exits the kidney with about half that amount of urea. The third part of tubular reabsorption that I want to address today revolves around the significance of water and its involvement in reabsorption. The kidneys reduce 180 liters of glomerulus filtrate down to 1 to 2 liters of urine every day. So basically, there's 180 liters of fluid coming out of the blood being processed by the glomerulus all over the two kidneys. Again, we have 1 million nephrons approximately in every kidney, and so basically we have that producing about 180 liters of filtrate, but that all goes down to about 1 to 2 liters of urine that we excrete during the day. If you had to replace as much of water on a daily basis, you would have to drink 12-ounce beverages every 3 minutes. So, but fortunately, 99% of that filtrate gets reabsorbed. 2/3 of it in the first part of the nephron called the PCT, and ending up with only 1 to 2 liters, which are basically drained out through the collecting ducts into the ureters and out of the body. That's an incredible amount of filtration that is performed every day. The third aspect of nephron function is called tubular secretion. Fluid arriving in the distal convoluted tubule, the DCT, contains about 20% water and 7% salts from the filtrate coming out of the glomerulus. Now again, if this were all passed as urine at that point, it would still amount to 36 liters a day. So in other words, more fluid reabsorption still needs to occur beyond this point. So once the fluid enters the collecting duct, it is now entirely urine. However, the fluid still needs to undergo a further change in water content. Tubular secretion is a process in which the renal tubule extracts chemicals from the capillary blood and secretes them into the tubular fluid. So within the PCT, the proximal convoluted tubule, and the remainder of the nephron loop, tubular secretion serves three purposes. So one, it contributes to acid-base balance. So if the fluid is too acidic, it's able to add more alkaline chemicals to it to make it more, to balance out the acid-base relationship, or if it's too alkaline, it can add more acidic chemicals to balance that out. The second purpose of tubular secretion is to extract wastes from the blood. So basically that'll include things like urea, uric acid, bile acids, ammonia, and creatinine. And then the third one, so if you're a patient who's on medication, things like taking medicines like morphine, penicillin, or aspirin, the nephron loop will also clear those drugs and contaminants from the blood. The fourth aspect of nephron function revolves around water conservation. So basically, as the collecting duct travels between the cortex and the medulla, so basically in the renal cortex areas where it receives tubular fluid from numerous nephrons. Now as it enters into the medulla area, more water is reabsorbed and the urine becomes more concentrated. So as a matter of fact, by the time the urine fluid leaves the collecting duct, it is 4 times more concentrated in urine than as when it was actually entering into the medulla. Also, the medullary portion of the collecting tube is more permeable to water than to solutes. So as urine passes down the collecting duct, water is able to leave the tubule by osmosis, thereby providing more water conservation, water reabsorption, whereas most sodium NaCl and other wastes remain behind for excretion. Here's another view of the nephron showing the ability of absorption or elimination of substances as fluid travels through the nephron, making adjustments in what is eliminated or absorbed depending on given conditions. Note too how the tissue surrounding the nephron is like a bath of water and various solutes, either awaiting to be eliminated or retained depending on the needs of the kidney. The remarkable feature of the nephron is that it can regulate itself and help regulate its environment depending on existing conditions. For example, the collecting duct can adjust water reabsorption to produce urine as either hypotonic or hypertonic, depending on the body's need for water conservation or removal. When a person is well hydrated, the hormone ADH drops its secretion activity. This makes the collecting duct less permeable to water. More water remains in the duct and you produce abundant dilute urine. In extreme cases, the blood pressure of a dehydrated person is low enough to significantly reduce the glomerular filtration rate. When the GFR is low, fluid flows more slowly through the renal tubule and there is more time for fluid or tubular reabsorption to occur. Less salt remains in the urine as it enters the collecting duct. Hence, there is less opposition to the osmosis of water out of the duct and into the surrounding tissue. More water is reabsorbed and less urine is produced. One complication arising from the various compounds traveling through the kidneys is the condition known as nephrolithiasis. Urine naturally contains substances that promote the development of crystals, which are composed of calcium, oxalate, sodium, phosphorus, and uric acid. These compounds promote the conditions for nephrolithiasis, which is also known as kidney stones, which can occur in the kidneys. However, stones may also appear in other organs as well. In addition to conditions for promoting crystal formation, urine also contains proteins and other compounds that inhibit crystal formation. These inhibitors aid the elimination of crystals before they attach to the kidney and grow into larger stones. If the crystals remain small enough and if the urine is diluted enough to avoid supersaturation, crystals will flow with urine through the ureters and bladder without being noticed or causing problems. Due to genetic, lifestyle, or other factors, often the conditions for nephrolithiasis outweighs the conditions for inhibiting stone growth and requires additional medical attention to help ensure proper health.